the month, the new moon offering. It says, throughout the months of the year, and 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering unto the Lord shall be offered, beside the continual burnt offering and his drink offering. Now I want you to notice this. On the first day of the month, the first day of every month, the new moon day, they were to offer certain sacrifices, but then in addition to that, they were to offer the continual burnt offering. That's the daily offering. So we find the new moon days had special sacrifices that would always be sacrificed in addition to the daily offerings. Now, in verses 1 through 6 of the next chapter, or 29, Numbers 29, 1 through 6, it says, and in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, now notice the 7th month, that is the Feast of Trumpets, blowing of trumpets, the first day of the 7th month. So it's a special day. It's even called a Shabbaton day in Leviticus 23. So this is a day of no servile work, a special day. And it says, in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, ye shall have an holy convocation, ye shall do no servile work. It is a day of blowing the trumpets unto you, and ye shall offer a burnt offering for a sweet savor unto the Lord, 1 young bullock, 1 ram, and 7 lambs of the first year without blemish, and 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering, to make an atonement for you, beside the burnt offerings of the month, and his meat offerings, and the daily burnt offering, and his meat offering, and their drink offerings. Now catch that, what he says there. He says, on the first day of the 7th month, which is a special day, a Shabbaton day, on that special day, they were to offer certain special sacrifices, and then in addition to that, they were to offer the new moon sacrifices that were offered every new moon. On the 7th month, they were extra sacrifices. They were to be offered, but they were to do that in addition to the new moon sacrifices and in addition to the daily burnt offerings. So you notice this was a stacked set of offerings that were to be made. When a new moon fell on a regular day of the week, they were to offer the new moon sacrifices in addition to the daily sacrifices. And then on the 7th month, when it was a special day, they had an extra set of sacrifices. So there were 3 sets of sacrifices that had to be made on the first day of the 7th month. They had to make the Feast of Trumpets sacrifices, they had to do the new moon sacrifices, and the daily sacrifices. Okay, now let's go on in verses 9 and 10. It says, and on the Sabbath day 2 lambs of the first year without spot, and 2/10 deals of flour for a meat offering mingled with oil, and the drink offering thereof. This is the burnt offering of every Sabbath, beside the continual burnt offering and his drink offering. So notice here there's given a particular set of sacrifices that were to be done every Sabbath, and it was to be done in addition to the continual burnt offering, the daily sacrifices. So every Sabbath, every day they were to do a set of sacrifices, but every Sabbath there was an extra set of sacrifices. And notice that on the 7th month, whenever the special day fell on the first day of the month, where extra sacrifices were already offered, then they were to have a triple set of sacrifices to be offered that day. The Feast of Trumpets sacrifices, the new moon sacrifices, and the daily sacrifices. And on the Sabbath, this was a special day that fell on a day where the normal burnt sacrifices, the continual sacrifices, was to be offered, and on top of that was the Sabbath offerings. Now we find in verses 17 to 23, it says, in the 15th day of this first month is the feast. 7 days shall unleavened bread be eaten. In the first day shall be a holy convocation. Ye shall do no manner of servile work therein. But ye shall offer a sacrifice made by fire for a burnt offering unto the Lord, 2 young bullocks, and 1 ram, and 7 lambs of the first year, and 1 goat for a sin offering, to make an atonement for you. Ye shall offer these beside the burnt offering in the morning, which is for a continual burnt offering. Now did you notice something missing there? On the 15th day of the first month, they were to offer special sacrifices, and they were to do this in addition to the continual sacrifices. You can see here that there is no triple stacked offerings here. There's only double stacked. You have the 15th day sacrifices, the first day of tabernacles sacrifices on top of the daily sacrifices, and that's it. If the 15th day was always a Sabbath, then you would also have the Sabbath day offerings. But you notice they're not mentioned here at all, because the Sabbath offerings did not always fall on the same day as the 15th. That's why there's no mention of doing those sacrifices in addition to the Sabbath offerings, because they took care of themselves. Every seventh day was a Sabbath. Whenever that happened, you did the Sabbath offerings. That's the only time you would do the Sabbath offerings, is when the Sabbath was. Since the 15th day of the 7th month was not a Sabbath, you do no Sabbath offerings on that day. Okay, let's continue. Verses 26 to 31. I made a mistake on that. We were talking about the first month, not the 7th month. But still, the 15th applies in both cases. Now here we are, Numbers 28, 26 to 31. It says, "Also in the day of the first fruits, when you bring a new meat offering unto the Lord, after your weeks be out, you shall have an holy convocation, you shall do no servile work." So that's the day of Pentecost. "But you shall offer the burnt offering for a sweet savor unto the Lord, 2 young bullocks, 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year, and 1 kid of the goats, to make an atonement for you. You shall offer them beside the continual burnt offering and his meat offering." Now notice this day of Pentecost only had a double stacked sacrifices. You had the Pentecost sacrifices and the daily sacrifices. There was no Sabbath sacrifices to be offered on that day because it was not a Sabbath. In fact, the Bible says very clearly it was the morrow after the Sabbath. So this is the first day of the week. But some have claimed that the Pentecost is supposed to actually be held on the 29th day of the 4th month. And they get this by counting 7 weeks, and then they add another 50 days. And so they come up to the 29th day of the 4th month, which they say is a Sabbath. So they say Pentecost is on a Sabbath. But here we find there is no triple stacked sacrifices here. Pentecost, you only had Pentecost sacrifices and daily sacrifices. No Sabbath offerings to be had on that day because it was not a Sabbath. It was the first day of the week. Now let's continue. In Numbers 29, verses 7 through 11, it says, "And ye shall have on the 10th day of this 7th month an holy convocation, and ye shall afflict your souls. Ye shall not do any work therein, but ye shall offer a burnt offering unto the Lord for a sweet savor, 1 young bullock, 1 ram, and 7 lambs of the first year, 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering, beside the sin offering of atonement, and the continual burnt offering, and the meat offering of it, and their drink offerings." So notice here, the Day of Atonement, the 10th day of the 7th month, they were to do there was only a double stacked sacrifices there. There was the Day of Atonement sacrifices, and there were the daily sacrifices. This was not a regular weekly Sabbath day. Okay, we find it consistent everywhere we've read so far. Let's go on in Numbers 29, verses 12 through 16. It says here, "And on the 15th day of the 7th month, ye shall have an holy convocation, ye shall do no servile work, and ye shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days, and ye shall offer a burnt offering, a sacrifice made by fire, of a sweet savor unto the Lord, 13 young bullocks, 2 rams, and 14 lambs of the first year, and 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering, beside the continual burnt offering, his meat offering, and his drink offering." So here we find that the 15th day of the 7th month is only a double stacked sacrifices. There's a special first day of tabernacle sacrifices, and then